Hello and welcome back, folks. Today in the workshop we have a native species that I've been working with for a few years now, and it is the chalkbark maple. Some of you remember it from a few different stages. One of the things that's continuing to be a struggle with this particular species, and will only make it really good for medium to large to extra large size trees, is internodial distance. I haven't been able to keep that in check. It likes to put out about 1 inch to 2 inches, maybe even longer on some cases. Here I've got some that are more like 4 to 6 inches in between the nodial distances. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to work on ramification on this tree. We're going to take it and cut it back to 2 sets of leaves on every single branch. Hopefully if we continue to do that, it may eventually compact it, but I've been working on this tree now for 3 seasons and it has not yet shown me anything different. One thing I do want to mention about this tree though is I have noticed the initial push from spring, it's a real long section in between the nodes, and then gradually as it gets out towards the end it does get more and more compact. So I think what I'm going to do next year is as soon as the leaves pop, I'm going to pinch the growing tips and see if that helps. I did need to get some distance from the trunk to where I want to start my ramification. So last year and this year is not really that big of a deal that we didn't get that done, but next year I'm really going to have to focus on that. So here's what the tree looks like currently. And we're going to, like I said, we're just going to go through this and we're going to take every single one of these back to 1 set of leaves. This one did actually have this year some flowers on it, and it has also produced some seed pods just like my trident maple. So this one does have seed pods on it as well, so it's a very mature tree. It was a mature tree when I initially collected it. I mean, you can see the trunk on this thing's, I've got a caliper, I can take the caliper measurement of the trunk. But the trunk, if I had to guess, is 6 to 8 inches in diameter. What you want to do is you want to go about 4 inches up from the base, which is going to be right at the bottom of this here. And that's about 4 1/4 inches right here, which means obviously the flare is going to be a lot larger than that. So decent sized tree. These are the size trees that I enjoy working on. They're pretty substantial and I like that about them. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this, and we'll revisit this when I'm about halfway through the reduction process. So stay tuned. Okay, here we are about 3/4 of the way through reducing this tree down to 2 sets of leaves per branch. Now, as you can see, not real impressive, especially if you were here up close looking at it like I am. There's a real, I mean, for instance, trying to find one of these that I could, here's one that I removed completely because it wasn't needed and it was growing in the wrong location. Just for the sake of demonstration, this is where I removed it from the parent branch. That's a good 6 to 8 inches of growth before the first set of leaves. So that's why I say it's not going to be a real great species for a smaller bonsai. Now, something I did find now that I've been working on this tree a little bit today is there's all these huge flushes with all this long extended growth, but down inside the tree there's a secondary, I don't know if it's a secondary budding or if it's just the weaker buds, kind of like on a conifer. You've got your main candles that go out and they're really strong and they really push growth, and then you got the weaker candles down inside there that sprout out and they don't grow as long or as thick or as rapid. And in evergreen type trees, those are the ones you want to focus on for your final design, because those are the ones that are going to be the smaller, more compact. I'm noticing that on the majority of this tree. So what I'm going to try to do, and I think I'm going to try to do, is I'm going to bring all this back to those weak buds and branches that are down inside here that didn't explode on the first growth flush, and that may be what needs to be done on this particular species of tree in order for it to be reined in as a bonsai tree. So just wanted to kind of show you where we are right now, and that new little find that I found on this particular tree, and I think that might be one of the secrets to unlocking the way to keep this tree in check in order to utilize it as bonsai material. So I'm going to keep reducing this tree back to these weaker shoots and weaker leaves and weaker growth areas this year to see what happens. Now this tree was a Yamadori. This is the third year it's been in this growing container, and I'm going to do this more as an experiment than anything, because I really don't have much at all experience with this particular species of tree. I looked at it last year. It exploded with growth like this, but I didn't have that secondary inner growth that's weaker and really compact. I'm talking about, you know, a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch versus 6 to 8 inches between internodial distances. So I'm going to kind of experiment on this tree, and we're going to go ahead and cut back to those and see what happens this year, and maybe that'll yield us a better overall design for this tree. I've also noticed in these weaker growth areas that the leaves are about the size of a quarter, whereas the majority of these other leaves here are about, I don't know, 2 to 3 inches in diameter. I'll show you one of each just for perspective. Let's see here. Here's one of the smaller branches that I cut off that I didn't need. It's a pretty severe difference in size. This is one from the larger growth areas that just shot way out. I mean, you see the size of that leaf. This leaf right here is from that inner secondary growth on this tree. So if we reduce the tree back to this inner secondary growth, I'm hoping that the habits of this tree are going to be more compact down the road. Since we're eliminating the strong areas and focusing on the weak areas, those weak areas are going to get stronger, but I hope they don't expand like it did this spring. So let's go ahead and get started doing that. There may be some areas of this tree that we're not going to be able to do that on, but the ones that I have the ability to, I'm going to focus my attention towards those areas of this tree to try to bring it back in check and see what we can get out of it. So stay tuned. Alright, so here we are. As you can see, the tree looks just about naked. This is actually the second week of June. So realistically, right now in South Carolina, now would be the time you're going to want to do leaf cutting in total defoliation for a second flush of growth in one season, which is another good technique to do for trees of the maple and deciduous species to get smaller compact leaves and 2 growths of ramification in one season. Not quite at that point with this tree yet. But you can see we removed probably 80% of the foliage that was on this tree. Some of the areas that had the real long internodial growth that didn't have any of the small compact growth, I did notice right where they pushed the stem, there were 2 dormant buds there. So I'm hoping now that there's going to be an immense amount of light that gets into this tree, what will happen is those buds may pop this year again and then create more branching. And if that's the case, those, as soon as I see them coming out, I'm pinching the top of them. So I'm not going to let them get that real long growth like it did this spring. So let's do a quick 360 on the tree. I'm kind of happy with the outcome. There's still some branches on here that I need to remove for the overall final design of this tree. Like I said, this tree is really young in the development stage of its life. I have some branches where I want them that aren't large enough. I have some branches where I don't want them that I'm leaving on there currently. In the event that there's another branch right next to it that dies back, I still have it to utilize. Don't know a whole lot about this tree or this species of tree, so I don't know its growth habits and all. So I am taking it a little bit slower than I normally would on a tree that I'm familiar with the growth habits of. But I think overall it's turning out fairly well. You can see from the very beginning of this video the difference in the leaf size of the leaves that are currently on this tree versus when we first started. And you can see they're about a third of the size that they were in the beginning. So hopefully what we've done here is a good thing, and hopefully the tree will respond well. I have been watering this tree. It does have a little bit of fertilizer in it from last year that I think is what created that initial boom of growth. But I have another one of these that's on my bench that didn't get any fertilizer, and it did the same thing without fertilizer. So I think that's the habit of this tree. This tree starts out as an understory tree here in South Carolina, and I guess it's just genetically designed to explode with growth, because the faster it can get up to the top of the canopy, the more it can compete with the trees that are around it. So I think what we're going to have to do is kind of keep the tree in check, because that's what it's designed to do in nature. I am happy that I did find this secondary inner growth here that you see currently. All of this was hidden by that first flush of growth, and you know, I probably should have done this earlier than I have now, but I feel that, you know, it's all really nice and green still. It's all healthy. Eventually what would happen is, if we didn't do what we just did, removing all that initial growth, all this would be shaded to the point where it would die out and it wouldn't be viable any longer. So if you're working with this species of tree, this is definitely something you're going to want to keep an eye out for, and maybe utilize this technique, or if you had, share your findings. I would be more than happy to get some additional information. So this is it for the season so far on this tree. I have a feeling that now that there's an immense amount of light that can get in here, these dormant buds that are down at the very base where the initial shootout was are going to awaken. And so we may have another video of this one in late summer, early fall, showing the second flush of growth and what we're going to need to do from there. But for now, this is what we have. Thanks for watching.